Welcome back to Dirty 20, everybody. I am Dungeon Master Ed. Today, on Characters of the Forgotten Realms, we look at the crazed crime lord, the Xanathar. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dungeon Master Ed, and today we're talking about a beholder known as the Xanathar. Now, in Forgotten Realms, he is known to live in Skullport, which is an underground city connected to the city of Waterdeep on the Sword Coast. Beholders are a super interesting monster species from D&D, a real classic. And in Volo's Guide to Monsters, they have quite a bit of information in there. I definitely recommend checking it out because it's a lot. But today we're focusing on the Xanathar. Beholders are an orbed-shaped creature that kind of floats through the air and has 10 eye stalks. And in the middle of its kind of bulbous orb-shaped body is a giant eye. Now, each of the eye stalks contain powerful magic that we're going to look at when we discuss the stat block. They have a history, they have a whole empire in the Spelljammer setting, which is pretty cool. But perhaps the most interesting thing about them is how beholders are born. Now, on page number 6 of Volo's Guide to Monsters, we have a little entry titled Birth of a Beholder, and I'm just going to read a little part of it. Beholders can produce others of their own kind, but the process has nothing to do with biology and everything to do with psychology. When a beholder sleeps, its body goes briefly dormant, but its mind never stops working. The creature is fully aware, even though to an outside observer it might appear oblivious of its surroundings. Sometimes a beholder's dreams are dominated by images of itself, or of other beholders, which might or might not actually exist. On extremely rare occasions when a beholder dreams of another beholder, the act creates a warp in reality from which a new, fully formed beholder springs forth unbidden, seemingly having appeared out of thin air in a nearby space. Now, this is just so kind of nuts in terms of like reproduction, and I think that it speaks a lot to kind of the magic and the mystical energy that surrounds beholders. They are considered aberrations, so they are from the far realm, I believe, originally, but they're certainly powerfully, magically imbued creatures. What's really cool is that they're kind of really unique to Dungeons and Dragons, as in it's where they come from, and they've appeared in a couple of other things, namely one of my all-time favorite movies, Big Trouble in Little China, but they are an absolute staple of D&D. Now, the Xanathar has been pretty prevalent in 5e, to the point where he has a whole book where he is essentially the narrator in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. If you haven't checked it out yet, please check out our video where we review the book. It's a really fantastic book. Now, from that book, though, you're not going to get a lot of crunch for the Xanathar, as in stats or anything like that, but you do get a little bit of an insight into his personality. There are quite amusing little kind of side notes that he has written, which I think work really well for the Xanathar. Not so much in the other books, but that's a topic for another video. And you're also introduced to his pet goldfish, Silgar, who is probably like just one of my favorite concepts for like a character. But let's have a quick look in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, where they have just a little introduction and tell you about the narrator that's telling you about the book, right? Beneath the bustling city of Waterdeep, a beholder crime lord keeps tabs on everyone and everything, or so the beholder thinks. Known as Xanathar, this bizarre being believes it can gather information on everything in the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse. The beholder desires to know it all, but no matter what the beholder learns and what treasures it acquires, its most prized possession in all the multiverse remains its goldfish, Silgar. So these are kind of elements that make this NPC, this character, just really interesting and give you a sense of what he's like and how you can roleplay him if you want to use him. And we're going to talk about that. The other book in 5th edition, where he is very prominent in, is Waterdeep Dragon Heist. So we already discussed that when we did our video on Jarlaxle. And here, much like Jarlaxle, the Xanathar is one of the potential villains that you can face in the adventure. So again, there's a little introduction to him on page 220 of Waterdeep Dragon Heist, where you just kind of are given a bit of a flavor for him. You're also told to look at the stat block in the monster manual. So bear that in mind if you think you're going to get his stat block in this book. So let's take a look at it and use this as another piece in the puzzle in order to be able to roleplay this character and use him in our campaigns. Xanathar is the name given to the Beholder crime lord that lives in the dungeons under Waterdeep. It isn't the first Beholder to claim this mantle, nor will it be the last. Like all Beholders, Xanathar is a paranoid tyrant that charms and bullies its minions into servitude. The Xanathar Guild is made up of some of Waterdeep's most disreputable folk, as well as monsters forced into servitude or drawn to the Beholder by the promise of treasure, food, or power. Treachery within the ranks of the guild is common, as servants vie for the beholder's favour and affection. Such boons are fleeting, though as the beholder is quick to distrust those who finagle their way into his good graces. Xanathar lives in a dungeon under Skullport, a subterranean settlement connected to Undermountain's 3rd level. The place resembles a ramshackle town built inside a giant cavern connected to an underground river. Now, my favourite part in this whole thing is where they kind of get into the whole Silgar part, so let's check that out. The only creature Xanathar truly cares about, aside from itself, is a fish named Silgar, that it keeps in a large glass tank. Xanathar has minions that look after the fish constantly, but even their ministrations can't keep such a creature alive forever. Whenever the fish dies, panic spreads through the occupants of the lair, as minions try to replace the fish before Xanathar realizes what has happened. Luckily for them, the beholder can't tell one fish from another. I absolutely love this, and this actually inspired me to kind of start laying the groundwork for the fact that the Xanathar was in my campaign. Now, the book is going to send you to the monster manual, the entry for the Beholder, which we're going to have a look at in just a minute. But important to remember that this particular Beholder, the Xanathar, has 3 magic rings attuned. And they are a ring of invisibility, a ring of mind shielding, and a ring of force resistance. Now, all of these little bits are starting to add up, where we're starting to feel like we can embody the character of the Xanathar when we use him in our campaign, but we need to now take a look at its stats, and this is actually quite fun. So let's jump into the monster manual and look at the Beholder stat. So on page 28 we have the stat block for a Beholder, and first thing to notice, I would say, is that there's several different types of Beholder. And these things are fairly deadly. Even something like a Spectator, which is only challenge rating 3, can still pose a serious challenge. I recently had a character die facing one of these things. So, you know, don't take them for granted. They're pretty deadly. Now, the main attraction for me when it comes to the Beholder and their stats and their abilities is their eye stalks. There are 10 different stalks, and each of them can shoot a ray out of it. So, for example, you have the Charm Ray, Paralyzing Ray, Fear Ray, Slowing Ray, Enervation Ray, Telekinetic Ray, Sleep Ray, Petrification Ray, Disintegration Ray, and Death Ray. And yes, they're all as cool as they sound. But essentially, a Beholder, or the Xanathar, if that's what you're going to use, is going to be using 3 at random on each of its turns. And I think the randomness is kind of a big part of the fun. Having said that, you're at liberty, I think, to, you know, use the ones that make sense. Disintegration rays are really not fun. They are genuinely insta-kills. Death rays as well can be insta-kills. So bear that into consideration. You know, you can choose a different ray if you're pretty certain that it's going to kill one of your PCs. Another one of its really, really cool elements is the anti-magic cone, which says that when its main eye, if you kind of draw a cone from the Beholder, from the Xanathar, to whatever character it's currently looking at, right? All the characters in its kind of field of view. they cannot cast magic against it. So again, suddenly wizards are screwed. Now, having said all this, there was one really important element that was mentioned when we were reading through some of the background info to the Xanathar, and that is that it's actually a title. That there's been other beholders who have been known as the Xanathar in the past, and that there will be other beholders who will be known as Xanathar in the future. So what I really love about that is that even if your characters do kill the Xanathar in combat for whatever reason, that doesn't mean that another beholder isn't going to take up the mantle. And I love the idea that, you know, your characters have done this thing and they feel really confident and proud of their achievement, and it turns out that there are rumors that he's still around, and then the PCs have to investigate because they're like, no, we killed this guy, right? So again, I love that to kind of keep the campaign going. Now, how have I used the Xanathar in the past? Because he runs a criminal organization, I've had him be involved in things whilst not physically kind of being there. Again, I laid the foundation for him appearing later on. I ran a campaign where there was a thing called a contest. And this was very much inspired by Waterdeep Dragon Heist, where different criminal organizations were vying to find a particular vault which was full of these powerful items and treasure and things like that. Again, very much inspired by Dragon Heist, right? And the Xanathar guild was one of the participants. And so I knew that I wanted to kind of involve him in his craziness. So there was one moment where I had some of his minions, his mayordomo, going to a market to buy a replacement Silgar, right? And the PCs were aware that he was going to be there, and they went there, but then other people were aware. It turned into a massive, quite memorable actually, kind of scrap in this marketplace, which the PCs were totally underprepared for. They were not at a high enough level to face a lot of these guys. But again, using that kind of trail of breadcrumbs where you start suggesting, oh, there's these people and they belong to the Xanathar's guild, and you talk to him and, oh, he's working for his master, he's trying to find a goldfish. So these elements are starting to build up a background to this very important NPC, and that's what this series is about, right? These characters, Jarlaxle, Xanathar, these are larger than life. They're kind of legendary, so you have to start laying the groundwork to a certain degree beforehand, right? Eventually in my campaign, the PCs ended up finding the vault at the same time that everyone who was taking part in the contest did as well. And they're in this really tense situation where there's kind of a standoff, and suddenly, like, through the wall just smashes this huge creature, this aberration. And for me, it was really important to have him have a memorable voice. So I went with a kind of 1920s like gangster, you know, or news. Yeah, I'm the Xanathar. Ha ha! It's party time. And so I introduced the character, and I ended the session in that moment. And it's become just a very memorable thing that my players still to this day, you know, remember. And they've only met him once. You know, there we have it. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed the crazy crime boss that the Xanathar is and represents. Let us know what you think about them, if you would use him in one of your campaigns. Also, let us know if there are any other characters of the Forgotten Realms that you would like us to do in this series. I have lots in mind that I want to do, but I'd love to hear from you guys. Please like and subscribe, and as always, keep slaying. If you've enjoyed this content, then please smash that like button, subscribe, share this around online, and come and visit our website, www.lavictoriaproductions.com, to see all our past episodes, as well as our blog posts and all the stuff that we're currently working on at La Victoria Productions. Why not reach out to us and tell us what you think of our videos? You can reach us on Twitter. At Mouth La Victoria is our producer. We are also on Instagram. I am Enano LVP, and our producer is Jazzy J Cherot. We're also La Victoria Productions on Facebook and LinkedIn. Come on by and let us know what you think.